Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Martin Collins USA webinar. Tonight we have Glynny Walford, CEO of Martin Collins USA, and John Gary of Instinctive Designs with us. And they are going to be discussing the importance of arena maintenance. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to type them in the chat box, which you'll see at the side of your screen. And at the end of the presentation, John and Glynny will answer the questions that you have. In the event that we have a number of questions and we can't get to them all this evening, we will answer those questions through the social media channels, and you can also contact John or Glynny via the contact information at the end of the presentation, and they will be happy to answer it for you. So over to you, Glynny.
Thank you very much indeed for having us along this evening, and we hope you're going to enjoy the webinar and put forward your questions. And we're going to be concentrating on the importance of arena maintenance. John's going to come in with me, and we're going to split the webinar between us and talk about the different topics that we'll cover. But let's start with the first slide. As we all know, after saving up all the pennies and spending a lot of time and money working with your contractor to get an area, lay a foundation, you built a riding arena of your own, and you're absolutely over the moon. Now comes the part that I think you'll agree here, John, don't you?
Yes.
It's so frequently overlooked, and it's the single most important factor if you want the footing to ride to its optimum performance level, and that's the maintenance of it. It's absolutely crucial, and we can't, I don't think, stress too much importance on that, can we?
Yeah, that's definitely the most thing, that's the biggest thing that's overlooked in longevity of footing.
Care advice for all synthetic riding surfaces. We recommend that arena footing should be installed to a compacted depth of 4 inches, as this depth is really one that's going to give you proper stability, strength, integrity, and the cushioning factor. And this applies to both fibre and sand, and also coated footings. John, would you talk a little bit on the surface being kept both level and compacted?
Yeah, sure. The surface must be maintained level and compact. We do that through a variety of means and checks and balances. Mostly you want to use a groomer that is designed for the ease of use, like the Martin Collins Arena Master. All the settings are on that machine, so if you're pulling double duty with your tractor, it's easy to pick up and go again. You must maintain it level, so you got to pull jumps out and things like that to be able to keep the surface level, and so you don't get holes and high spots.
Mm. And I think it's important, isn't it, to say that the arena should be maintained according to you. So, for instance, if you've got 1 horse on it a day, a lot of it's common sense, isn't it?
Sure.
You're not perhaps going to do that every day, but if you've got 20 horses on it, or yes, it's daily maintenance. And as you can see there, special attention should be paid to high traffic areas, because I think the track seems to get a lot of use, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's something that the track gets a lot of use, and the track is also one of the harder places to maintain because it's the edge. Mm. And I think probably one of the most overlooked maintenance areas, with the exception of the very ends, especially where the grooming equipment turns. That's typically where we're seeing either holes dug with grooming equipment or material deposited, so you've got a deep spot.
Yeah, and really, I suppose the best thing to do is to rake the sides in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Before you start using the groomer.
Yeah, we like the ones that we maintain often. We like to rake the sides in no more than every 3 times. If you stay on top of it, it makes it a lot more and lot easier to do and not quite as big a job.
Okay. This is a good one. The approach to your arena. We always recommend that you have a track area that takes your horses and your grooming equipment to the arena, so that you're not going to take any debris in there with you. So it keeps the tractor tires, groomer clean, and the horse's feet clean, rather than taking in mud, etc.
Normally when we build one, we will use the same type of surface to build an extension approach all the way to a hard surface, whether it be it concrete or blacktop driveway or whatever.
Or I suppose a lot of people use clean stone, don't they?
Yeah, sure, clean stone. Anything that you're not going to be tracking into the arena, and you can keep the mud.
So you mean you'll take the surface, just extend it a little bit outside the arena,
sure,
just so it meets that more secure approach. Keeping horses' feet clean is a good one as well. I know a lot of people tend to think this is a little bit of a pain, but if you can possibly pick out their feet, then that's helpful. Another really important thing that we do is carry out regular depth checks, because they flag those danger inconsistencies, don't they?
Yeah, sure. We like to even recommend keeping those in a logbook, so you can see where the footing's moving, where the surface,
that's a good idea.
Where it's moving, and know how you've been grooming, and that's how the surface is getting moved, is the way you're grooming. So if you know the surface is moving into one spot or moving out of one area, you can go back and look, oh, well, I've been grooming this way, or it's a little spongy or a little deep on the end in the center. Well, that's probably because you're turning a little too tight when you're grooming.
Gotcha.
And it's keeping it a little looser.
Okay.
Not allowing the groomer to pack it like that.
Right. I know that what we tend to do is draw ourselves a little grid, and we'll take depths. I mean, mine's not very posh, as I call it. It's a screwdriver, and I got it taped up, for the depth of the surface. And then I'll take depth checks along the track, quarter, centre, 3/4 line, probably every 10, 15 feet. And then I'll record those on the sheet, like 4 inches, 3 inches, 3.5, whatever. And then from that too, that's a good idea, keeping that in a log, so not just on a sheet of paper, but have a little book. And we normally say it's good to do that, 4 times a year, and not terribly difficult to do, and it'll help you, enormously. And as John says, it'll point out if the surface is being moved and you need to change your maintenance procedure pattern. Is that the best way of putting it?
Yeah, changing the pattern around, changing the.
So would you say that, you'll do, for instance, longitudinal passes, and then would you then all change that and go one way one day and one way the next?
Yeah, sure. And make sure that when you're entering the arena, you're not always dropping the groomer at the same spot, because when you drop it, you're picking up material. Unless you pick the groomer up at that exact same spot, you've in effect a small hole. And if you continue to do that over time, you end up with an issue.
And then what about circling?
Yeah, the circles will really level out. Like if you haven't moved a jump in a while, or you haven't moved dressage fences, and you've got that depth. If you do circles and then kind of, I guess, like spring a slinky laying over on its side, and you kind of offset those circles until you cover the whole arena. It hits the areas at a different angle and allows them to fill in and cut the high spots off with the groomer.
Yeah, that's a good one you've come across, actually, because we've looked here on the slide about, fences should be moved regularly. But it's true, in some larger arenas, you'll put up like your dressage white containment boards, so that's a good one to move those as well.
Those are probably one of the ones that we see not get moved nearly enough. I know they're a pain to move because there's so much, but
it's the right way of doing
really,
things.
really important to do.
And as you said, it's longevity.
Yeah.
And this is at the last point, actually, which is so important. We've touched on it on the approach, but the organic matter.
Sure.
Like, for instance, manure.
Manure, leaves, straw, bedding. A lot of arenas now are connected to barns, and
wind blows.
Yeah, I was just at one earlier in the week, and they were blowing the wood chips out of the barn, and they blew them out into the arena. And it's like,
yeah, that's where they're going to end up. Now we're talking about lunging. This is we've always said it's a big no-no. If you have to lunge on the surface, we do strongly suggest that you walk at lunge from one end of the arena to the other, so that you don't give yourself, as we call it, a donut in the surface. And I think you'd agree, John. I mean, ideally, it's the best thing to give yourself a dedicated lunge ring. Yeah. Sure.
A dedicated lunge ring is much better than in your arena. I know the arena is nice and big, but it does create some maintenance headaches.
Likewise, not using the school as a turnout area.
Yeah, that's one thing that we strongly outline and recommend against, is using it as a turnout area, just because
they're going to roll.
You're getting all kinds of organics in it. Even when you pick manure, you're not getting every smidgen. I mean, you're not getting every bit of it. I mean, that's just being realistic.
I think this point about using the maintenance machine, probably we'll cover a bit later as well when we come on to the types, but it is one where caution should be taken, shouldn't it? That tines aren't dropped in too deep.
Sure, that's all in conjunction with your depth checks. I like to do depth checks even more often than the 4 times a year if possible, just because it's all protecting your investment. And we like to keep the maintenance machine where we're adjusting it, how we're adjusting it. We like to keep that in that same log book as the depth checks. That way we know what results we're getting with what settings.
Gotcha. Okay. There's a nice shot here, actually, of it's a clock fibre and sand, actually, outdoor arena there. Making your riding surface last. It's true, actually, in what we're saying here, that are correctly installed, and what is an expensive investment. Making it last is going to be determined by a range of factors. So both of us really strongly recommend that you follow the manufacturer's recommended maintenance guidelines. And as we've just covered, lift all debris, horse droppings, leaf fall, etc. Carry out your regular depth checks, which we've just talked about. And again, covered this one, construct an access track to the arena to keep the horse's feet and maintenance equipment clean when entering and leaving.
Sure.
I think this is another one too that is worth pointing out. If you've built or you have an existing small arena, we have seen that they are subject to higher wear and tear, and it's really important and advisable, and we both agree on this, if the piggy bank, for want of a better word, will permit, lay an additional inch of footing to compensate for this fact, because again, it's the type of horses that are using it, and in those smaller areas, John, those turns are quite tight, aren't they?
Sure, it's almost getting to where it's a lunge style situation. So the extra inch, or even a little better if the piggy bank will allow, will help you.
If we talk a little bit about two types of surface on the market. So we've got non-coated surfaces, and then we'll come on to the coated surfaces. But I think it's true to say that basically the non-coated surfaces, like your fibre and sand, are going to require more maintenance than those with a wax-coated footing, because you're going to have to irrigate.
Definitely, and more timely maintenance. I think you really have to stay on top of the irrigation and the maintenance on a non-coated, maybe even more than a coated surface.
Yeah, because it's true, isn't it, that once the surface is dried out, it's going to ride deep and quickly become unlevel.
Yeah, dry sand will definitely move around a lot more, and if you're not careful, you'll be in a situation where you have to call and spend a little more money to get it back.
Yeah,
it gets out far enough, and
I mean, it can be rectified, but you know, I think the important point here is to keep it correctly irrigated, evenly irrigated.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing that we see a lot. So somebody will have trouble with an inconsistent surface, and they'll blame it on the surface originally, just not understanding. And then once it's explained, and once we show them, they understand that it is definitely an inconsistent in their watering, be it a water wagon and their technique that they're using, or an improper irrigation system will do the same thing.
You mean like sprinklers and things? Because I know sometimes I say, well, the sprinklers will cover an area, but then there's a gap. And so the horse will have, and you can see it. You can see it in the colour of the footing, can't you?
Sure, and it may not be immediate, but as that surface dries out, you'll notice the change in the different spots. Because even if a sprinkler is covering a sprinkler is not even. That's why in a turf situation, in a yard situation, a professional sports field, they will have, in their language, will be head-to-head coverage, and that's where one sprinkler head will actually spray and hit the other sprinkler head, because the water output is not the same during that whole distance from the sprinkler head. So when they touch, it averages together, and that's how you get a consistent water.
Right. Okay.
Which is often overlooked.
Because I think this is such an important point, because in those inconsistencies, the footfall, you can get maybe 2 or 3 strides on something that's properly irrigated, and then it's going to be deeper because it's not irrigated and it's drier. So the horse is going to feel that through its musculoskeletal system. So that's going to put it off balance.
Sure.
And it's not terribly safe either, really, is it?
Not terribly safe, and your horse is not confident.
No, that's true. But say, for instance, in the worst scenario, let's look at this one. Say you've got a fibre and sand. Say you've got a cloth fibre and sand surface, and you have to go away, and there's nobody to look after it, keep it watered whilst you're away, and it dries out, and all the fibre comes to the top, which we know happens.
Sure.
That happens too in like sand, rubber, sand.
Sure, yeah, any of it.
You can rectify it, can't you, by watering it and rototillering it back in and get it back. But it's specialist machinery, isn't it?
It's specialist machinery, and it's a delicate process not to go too deep to find the base, because you're dealing with very limited margins of error.
Right.
And that definitely takes experience.
Okay. Now, the coated surfaces, I think the main points with these is that, providing the maintenance guidelines are adhered to, they're dust-free.
Sure.
And those maintenance guidelines are obviously keeping it well maintained, lifting the manure, organic debris, etc. I think they do have good climatic tolerance. They don't require an irrigation system. With ours, they are coated with a robust wax coating. They are not coated with oils or petroleum jellies. And we do this because some oils can wash through the surface on an outdoor and block up the underlying base. And we found that neither oils or the petroleum jelly type coatings have the same lifespan as a wax coated footing and require recoating much sooner. I mean, you know, I know I talk about this, but if you put a jar of Vaseline in the window in the summer, what does it do? It's going to melt.
Turns to liquid.
Yeah. Whereas, you know, you want your robust wax coating to be robust, and all right, it might ease around the components, but your maintenance guidelines are, you know, they just differ from winter through to summer. Now, you've laid a number of these, John, so how do you find they're received, and how do they stand up?
Folks love them, and with proper maintenance, we've got a client in Maryland that rode on it all winter when folks indoors were flooding and underwater or outdoor was not.
Crumbs.
And that's due to base construction and maintenance.
Yeah.
It was kept open and to allow the water to go through to the base, and she rode on it all winter and all spring.
Well, that says something, doesn't it? These are actually, this is in Europe actually, and these are the ponies, you know, that do the scurry driving. Okay, well, let's look at caring for the surface in the summer. And obviously we're looking at wax coated, and we're looking at the non-coated ones. So would you agree that really it's important that you consult with your contractor for advice on the correct irrigation system and the amount of irrigation for a non-coated surface?
Sure.
It's going to vary from area to area, isn't it?
It's going to vary from area to area. It's also going to vary from rider to rider, because some riders are going to want it more firm than others, and that can be adjusted with both the amount of water, frequency of water, and also grooming.
Right, okay. We've talked about the fibre sand footing will dry out if it's not correctly irrigated. The maintenance machine. Now, if we go onto a wax-coated surface in the summer, we're going to really use less time and more roller, aren't we?
Yes, especially on the wax-coated where the robust coating has eased a little bit. You're going to want to keep the time minimal. During the summer months, just enough to move around and fill in the divots from the holes, or from the hoof.
From the hoof prints, yeah.
Fill in the hoof prints.
And I think this is a real good point, you know, John. The indoor arenas maximise airflow. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I do, definitely, as much as possible.
Because I think, you know, people wonder why, for instance, on a coated product, it's eased more, and yet the building's completely shut up, and the heat, crikey, you open the doors and it practically knocks you flat.
Yeah, and not only for the surface, but the comfort of the rider too.
Yeah,
it makes it nice.
Yeah, you like that sort of nice breeze to blow through. Little picture here. This is actually out in the Middle East. This is a coated product. Actually, this is our EcoTrack's been down for 8-9 years now, I think. And this is where we're talking about airflow in this picture. You can see it's nice and bright, and they've got their doors open. You know, they're trying to make the most of getting that air flowing through. And I have to say, actually, I love this picture because this is EcoTrack in the rain, and you can see that it's riding without big soggy patches, but they have a proper, you know, free draining base underneath it. But it's I think it's just a picture that, you know, is quite a good one. Now, caring for the surface in the winter. Now, come in on this one with me, John. If we talk about freezing temperatures, would you agree that normally we say that you've got to keep an eye on the weather? I mean, you've got to be a bit savvy about this. And if they're forecast, go out there and basically open up your surface a little bit more so that frost doesn't actually get a grab hold on it.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I would, definitely. Keep it as loose as possible to keep it open, to let keep the frost from getting a hold on it.
But then the following morning, if you check it, you can always run the Arena Master around it, can't you? And just sort of settle it back down again.
Yeah, and get it in riding shape.
Yeah. And again, we always advise people not to use the maintenance equipment to break up any ice particles.
Yeah, you don't want to take a chance on one tearing up your maintenance equipment. But you also, if you got big chunks of ice, you'll move substantial amounts of footing around at one time, and you're just shooting yourself in the foot.
So it's better to let it thaw.
Yeah.
In the snow, good one. Now we always advise that you don't work snow into your surface. You do that, and then the temperatures plummet. You've got an ice block,
and you're done for an extended period of time. Where if you just got a little snow on the top, it's gonna melt off, and you could always blade off a little bit on the top and still leave a little cover of snow.
Yeah.
And ride on.
Yeah, because it blankets it basically, doesn't it? A bit like your garden, when the snow falls on your garden.
Yeah, it'll keep it. It'll actually, if you have snow on it and the temperatures are going down extremely cold, it'll actually keep it
Protect
a little warmer.
Yeah. Yeah. You've covered that actually, interestingly enough, when you talk about removing it carefully with a blade if you can. And don't use your maintenance equipment to break up any snow that's frozen, because it's not designed for this use.
Yeah, they're just not made for that. That's not what they're designed for. The Martin Collins machines are well built, but not designed for that.
Now, in the case of, say for instance, our EcoTrack, the wax coated surface. Now, we've found that if you don't adhere to the maintenance, if you ride on it, and you don't open it up, as we've suggested, it can get over-compacted in really cold weather, which is understandable. You've got to adhere to that maintenance program, haven't you, to try and stop that from happening?
Yeah, and once it becomes like that, it's a little trickier to.
We've got to open it and aerate it, get that air back into it, and get that cushion going again.
And that's more than just the Arena Master.
Yeah.
I mean, any of your grooming equipment is not gonna quite get the job done at that point.
But that's another good thing, that anything that we install, people can always talk to you guys about it for a bit of help, can't they?
And we would much rather you call us and ask questions than to get in a shape where you have to call us for help.
Yeah.
As crazy as that sounds, it sounds like we don't want your business, but
it makes a lot of sense.
But we do. But we want you to be happy with the surface and keep it the best possible.
But wouldn't you agree, though, because we're specifically talking about coated now, that if you can keep it slightly more open, you keep the air in it, you keep the cushion going, because you can always settle it back down again, can't you?
Sure.
That's where it's so, not flexible, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, God, it's come in my head and gone, but anyway. You can work with it, let's put it that way. Now we come on to the maintenance equipment. I think, because there's so many different footings out there, wouldn't you agree it's best for people to buy the piece of maintenance equipment that's designed for their particular type of footing?
Sure, but I also think the Arena Master has been designed for ease of use and ease of operation, not only on Martin Collins surfaces, but
others.
It works for a lot of others awfully well. And all of the adjustments on that machine are on the machine instead of on the tractor. Okay,
well, let's just look at one here then. So we're looking at a picture of the Arena Master. Now, would you talk just a little bit, because I'm not really a machinery girl, but stick me on a horse and I'm fine. But would you talk a little bit about what you see as the plus points are of this piece of kit?
It's got a roller in the front, a roller in the back. That keeps the machine level no matter where the tractor's at. All of the adjustment is done with the top link on the tractor, which in the photo there is blue. You want to put the tractor and Arena Master on a hard level surface and level it front to back. That is done with the top link.
What, before you use it?
Before you use
concrete or something.
Yeah, before you use it, concrete in the aisleway of the barn, in the driveway, as level as you can get it. I recommend the top links are about $20. I recommend leaving that with the Arena Master instead of using that one with your other pieces of equipment also. They're not that expensive, and it makes life a lot easier.
That makes sense.
This particular tractor is a little different adjustment than most of the newer ones as far as leveling the Arena Master from side to side, left to right. It would be a little more complicated on that one. Typically on the right hand lift arm, which is what connects to the Arena Master on the bottom from the tractor. The right hand side typically has a crank handle on the top of it, and that would be how you would extend or shorten to level your machine left to right. The Arena Master has a swivel hitch, which is nice in a smaller arena because it allows you to turn without scooting the machine, and that allows ease of operator because you don't have to pay attention to how much pressure is on the Arena Master without piling footing up as you turn, which is really, really nice.
Okay, and then, but would you still lift it back up into the corner and pull out again? Or
sure,
yeah.
when you're doing the first round or two, sure, you would pick it up and back up into the corners. Get yourself away from the edge so you're not banging into your kickboards.
And then can you talk a little bit about these tines, John?
You've got the front row, you've got a spring tine, S tines. Those are going to do most of the heavy lifting. When we say more tine and less tine, those are the ones that we're talking about. They have a replaceable wear edge on the bottom that you want to keep an eye on. It's relatively cheap as compared to the rest of it if you wear down into the whole thing.
Because it's reversible, isn't it?
Yeah,
you flip it over and
sure.
Yeah,
they're reversible. They're reversible, sure. You will notice a little bit in a coated surface. You're going to notice a little bit more rapid wear in the wintertime on those. So just keep that in mind and make sure you have spares there if you need them. But the adjustment is done as you're on the tractor seat, the adjustment would be done on the right-hand side of the machine. In the photo, you can barely see a black cylinder toward the back.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
There's a handle on there, and that's actually a crank handle, and it clicks and adjusts the tines up or down. And if you get to a situation where your surface is really loose, you can actually pull the tines all the way out and just use rollers.
Right.
You would need to go back and groom, of course, with a little bit of tine at the very end before you rode on it to get rid of all your tracks. But
and this with these angled straight tines, that leaves a nice kind of combed finish, doesn't it?
Yeah, it leaves a nice comb finish. Fills in all of the little divots from the S tines in the front, and leaves a really nice surface.
And then what about looking after this machine? I mean, what do you need to do to keep it good? I mean, do you grease it?
Yeah, there's 4 major grease points on it that are really important to keep the sand out of more than keeping grease on them. You still need to grease them just to push the sand out of the bearings because typically we're talking about a silica sand, harder sand, and it's going to cut the bearings up. And they're going to be at all 4 corners of the machine on the roller.
Here.
Yeah, at the bottom on the roller axle. There are a couple of other grease points up on the swivel and also the adjustment, but they're important, but not nearly as often as the ones on the bottom. We groom ours every time we grease ours every time we use it.
Right.
Every time we groom with it, we put a couple pumps of grease in each fitting, and just makes life a lot easier.
Prevention. And then these come in 2 widths too, don't they? They come in we've got a 6 foot and we've got an 8 foot, but it depends on the horsepower of the tractor, because for the 6 foot you've got to have a minimum of 35 or above, right? Because it's got to be able to lift
pick it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pulling the machines aren't terribly hard, but to pick them up and move them around, that's where you need your bigger tractor, your more oomph to move it around.
Yeah, and so the 8 footer requires a tractor with a 50 or above.
Yeah, I think I've got it on a 50, 51 or 52, so right around 50, and you probably wouldn't want to go much less than that, just because it would start not wanting to pick it up and handle it safely.
And then what about the tyres on your tractor? I mean, obviously, you've got to make sure that your Arena Master is slightly wider than the tractor tyres, because otherwise you're going to have tractor tyre prints and compression. But what about the tyres that you put on it, ideally?
We have ag tires on ours just because the tractor is used for other things. Ideally, it would be nice if they had turf tires, as the one in the picture does. Mm-hmm. But it's also very important to keep those tractor tires clean, just like the hooves of your horse. You
could just imagine all the debris loving to get into all those little nooks and crannies, can't you? Yeah. Okay. Now, this is the little Towmaster. Do you want to talk a little bit about that for people that don't have tractors?
Yeah, the Towmaster works well behind a UTV or a four-wheeler or quad, whatever you want to call it. Not sure that a golf cart would have enough oomph to keep it going long term. They work well. You do have to operate them a little slower than do when you're on a ATV or a UTV. Your inclination is to go a little faster, just because it's typically what you're doing on that machine.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you do have to pay attention to your speed and keep it down, or you'll get the machine bouncing. Even though they are heavy made to limit the amount of bouncing, you can still get it to bounce with excessive speed.
Right, that makes sense.
And it's fully adjustable too. The adjustments are a little trickier on it, but not too difficult either. Not terribly difficult.
Right. Okay. And they actually come in a 5-foot width, don't they? Yeah. So really, I suppose summarising, with good maintenance, common sense, basically, your Arena should provide years of use, shouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you can expect many years of use out of a well-maintained and well-built Arena, as long as care has been taken the whole way.
I think it's good to say that, and to let you know that we have a footing guide. And anybody who has registered for the webinar this evening will receive a copy of the 25-page guide via email. It's packed with great, we think, advice on construction, Arena material selection. So we hope that if you're interested, that you will read it and ask us any questions once you've taken the opportunity to do that. John and I would like to thank you very much indeed for attending the webinar this evening. And please do not hesitate, and we mean this, do not hesitate to contact us if you've got questions or concerns, and we will, between John and I, we will do our best to help you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you guys for a very informative presentation there. I know we have some questions that are coming in. If you have a question, you can put it into the chat box should be on the bottom right-hand side of your corner right there. Go ahead and just type it in there, and we'll get those coming in there. We have a few already. If you want to go through these, can you see those on your screen there, Gwenny?
John and I, we can. We'd like to address the one that Warren's put forward, which is how do you deal with the constant compaction of the track compared to off the track when you're grooming? I find that groomers will tend to move loose material to the track because it's compacted lower. Do you recommend deeper grooming on the track? John?
No, I wouldn't. I would not recommend deeper grooming on the track. The way we would deal with that is that would be our first pass around the track. That's
after raking the sides in.
Yeah, we would rake the sides in, maybe a foot, depending on how close you feel comfortable getting with your groomer on your tractor. If you're comfortable getting within 6 inches, yeah, rake it in a foot and groom around the track first. And we don't really see a problem with.
This is an interesting point here that Warren makes. It says that they tend to find that groomers will tend to move loose material to the track because it's compacted lower.
Yeah,
Warren, we don't quite, both John and I are a little bit flummoxed on that one. We're not quite sure if you mean that your track is getting over compacted, but the centre of your arena footing is loose. It should really be the same consistency, shouldn't it?
yeah, I could see after a lot of rides, if you were only riding on the track, I could see the track becoming more used and more traffic area. And maybe that is where it's getting compact. I mean, maybe that's where the question's coming from. But that would just be addressed with regular maintenance as far as grooming the track.
Can we suggest, Warren, that please email us with more details, and we'll do our best to investigate more with you and try and give you some more solutions to that problem. This is one that I have actually heard before, John, and this is something that I think is not uncommon. And this is the question that my arena seems to have a wave in it. What's the best way to flatten out the surface? Also, what can I do to prevent the unevenness in the future? Well, don't you think we've covered the unevenness?
The unevenness, I think, is being referred to as the wave. And that is done, the arena master having a roller in the front and a roller in the back does eliminate that.
But if this person doesn't have an arena master, I think first of all you need to ascertain the type of footing, then you need to ascertain the type of maintenance tool
and maintenance schedule and really how much riding it's getting.
And passes, I suppose.
Sure.
Is it always longitudinal? Do they ever do circles? So I think once again, if we might suggest that you email us and give us some more information, and then John and I will try and help you a little bit further with that one.
I think we could get you squared out.
And now we've got a question from Lynn, so thank you, Lynn. What consistent cold temperature can EcoTrack be used? Say if the air temperature will seldom get above 40 degrees during the day and single digits at night. That's pretty excessive, isn't it? If it's consistently that cold?
Yeah, that's pretty excessive. If that's on an indoor, I believe with the proper maintenance schedule and the proper surface, I believe we could get something that would be acceptable.
Right, but if it's on an outdoor, that's pretty tough, isn't it?
If that's on an outdoor, I don't think that's realistic.
No. And now we've got another question here. I'm not sure who this is from, but the question is, it seems like one corner of my outdoor arena seems to hold more water than the rest of the arena. I'm assuming it's because it's a low spot. What's the best way to fix this? I think this is a pretty interesting one because it holds more water than the rest of the arena. I'm wondering if the base is blocked.
My first assumption would be if it's holding water, that it's not on a free draining base.
Right.
That it's probably a crowned or a sloped arena.
Yeah.
And either there's a low spot in the hard base.
Yeah.
And you've got loose surface that's why it's squishy, is because the low spot, exactly what you're saying. The low spot is full of water. That's a tough one. There's really no easy fix that's going to be foolproof.
I think really that particular problem, may we suggest to you that it requires a site visit, because you're not going to be able to answer this without actually seeing the arena and doing some test trial holes. Really, don't you agree?
Yeah, and we might could get a little farther along and a little bit better advice if we had a few pictures. Maybe we could get a few pictures from emailed to us, and we can help you along with some suggestions.
Okay. We've got another question here, and again, we're not sure who this is coming from, but thank you very much for the question. I run a moderately busy 20 horses or so boarding barn. There are about 5 or 10 horses that ride on the arena, outdoor or indoor. How often should I be working the arena? 5 to 10 horses. Depends on the type of, my first gut reaction is it depends on the type of surface.
And also the type of discipline.
And the type of discipline.
If we're talking 10 show horses riding 30 minutes, 40 minutes each, we're probably talking at least daily.
Yes,
if not.
I would say daily.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you? So just to finish off on that one, again, please email us because it is dependent upon the surface that you have installed and what type of work the horses are doing on it on a daily basis, and we'd be pleased to help. Next question is, we have a large tractor, 100 horsepower. Do you think this will cause problems when working the arena? John?
The only problem that it's going to cause is the ease of operating the piece of equipment inside a confined space. 100 horsepower tractor, been on equipment all my life. Yeah, I could probably get on one and groom an arena. Not ideal because you're going to see differences in compaction. So you're going to definitely need to vary your patterns under the tires. But I think you could work with it as long as you stayed on top of your depth checks and had the proper.
But you'd need to be fairly good at
Yeah, you need to be fairly comfortable on the tractor, and you got to realize that 8 foot is about the largest groomer that you're going to find, Arena Master or any other, and that's where you would need to make sure it covered your tire tracks.
And then on a tractor that with that 100 horsepower, what about the tires? I mean, it's going to.
You would want, like I say, as big a tires as possible on it, as wide a tires as possible to limit point compaction in a specific area. But I think you would be okay as long as you varied your pattern and you ran a little bit more time than maybe somebody with a smaller tractor would run.
Okay. The next question we have is, I might have missed this part, but what advice would you give for maintaining high traffic areas such as along the rails? But I think we've said, to rake the material back on, haven't we?
Yeah, you want to rake it off the kickboards or out from underneath the edge of your fence or toe boards or whatever you've got holding your footing in. Rake it back a good distance, a foot and a half, and then groom it. If you stay on top of grooming, you're able to keep the track in good shape and along with a consistent surface from track to track.
Yeah, and also if it's a non-coated surface, it's got to be properly irrigated, hasn't it, to keep that stability going? Yeah,
and it's tough when you start getting along the track. That's because you don't want it on your kickboards or your fence.
Could strengthen the amount. Say, for instance, it was a fibre and sand. You could strengthen the amount of fibre going into it, couldn't you?
Sure, you could.
A little bit more.
And that definitely helps. We've done that many times.
Right. So hopefully that's giving you a little bit of help there. Right. Thank you, Lynn, for this question. Describe what you are meaning by a free draining base and what materials or geotex layers would you use? I may have missed that at the beginning. Well, what we tend to work on, and John's going to come in on this, Lynn, is we work on a level, i.e. laser leveled base, and we work on vertical drainage, so the water goes through the surface, through the underlying layers, which John will briefly go through for you, into some drains, and those drains take the water away. We don't work on horizontal drainage, so we don't work on crossfalls or crans, but I'm going to hand over to John on this one.
When we talk about a free draining base, we talk about a base that is on top of your native soils that are compact and stable, be it clay, be it loam, be it whatever, whatever you've got. We can get it stabilized level. Then we would put drain tile in to get rid of the water. But what we're looking at is getting rid of the water off of the surface quickly. When you're talking about cross falls or sloped or crowned arenas, you're looking at running the water feet to get it off. If your arena's 60 feet wide, you're looking at water on a crowned arena, you're looking at running water 30 feet. And we've spent all this money on a nice surface. We want to be able to use that the most that we can. So we run the water 4 inches instead of 30 feet. We run it down through the surface into the free draining base, and the base is a crushed limestone, but that crushed limestone has to be large, single-sized stones so you have drainage spots, drainage pores. It would be similar to a French drain, be a similar stone that you would use in a French drain.
It knits, doesn't it?
Yeah, it knits together, it ties together, but there's still spaces for the water to go. That's where the water goes quickly, and then it goes to the drain tile and gets away.
Yeah.
But we don't want that chance of that stone being in our surface. So on top of that, we will use a layer of geofabric. We use a spun fabric, not a woven fabric. And that fabric, it's important to get that into one piece, whether it's sewn, which we find really hard to deal with, or welded together, which you can do with a little bit of
heat flame torch.
Yeah, heat flame torch, and there's a couple of other options out there for contractors to use. There's actually a new adhesive that we have that we are now going to start using.
Interesting.
That is even better than a weld joint.
So basically, the Geotex comes in rolls, doesn't it? So you overlap those rolls, and then obviously adhesive it. And then how do you fix it to the retaining boards? You know, so you stop that shrinkage.
We put a batten board, for lack of a better description, a 2x2 or a 1x2. Then we screw that to our retaining board. That way our fabric doesn't move, and you come up to the top of the surface.
So we hope that answers your question, Lynn. But if you've got any further points there, then don't hesitate to email us. And now the last question we've got is: do you ever have to add additional material to an arena? If so, how often? Well, from Martin Collins' point of view, this is what I can only say, is that we haven't actually topped up any of the EcoTrax. We haven't topped up any of the wax-coated surfaces that we've installed. And I think we've only topped up a cloth and sand ring once. Because the difference is that we're not putting in 2 inches of sand. We're putting our fibre into a compacted 4 inches of sand, but we're rototillering it into the top 3 inches, because the whole reasoning behind the cloth fibre is that it's a material that when it's rototilled into the sand, it teases out to help to form a root structure, a bit like the one you see when you cut a piece of turf. So the fibres actually are little tendrils wrap around the sand particles and help to bind them together. So it's creating a root structure, stability, and cushioning, and some energy return going up through the musculoskeletal system. So in that way, it's designed to stay in place, providing the maintenance is adhered to, and it's properly irrigated. Would you agree with that, John?
Yeah, I would. The only thing I would have to add would be that is with a proper free draining base. If you have a lot of surface water coming into on an arena,
good point.
you could have washouts.
Yeah, good point.
We don't have to worry about that because we do all of our installs on a free draining base.
Level one.
But that is on a level free draining base. But that is something of concern.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You could have washouts, especially if you're on a hard non-draining base. I know here in Kentucky it's common to see Class I sand as a base, and then Class I sand and river sand is the surface, riding surface, and those of course do wash. I mean, that's just how it's going to be.
Nature of the
I mean, that's just how it's going to be. I mean, the water has to go somewhere.
May we just thank you all for your questions, and we hope we've helped you somewhat, but please don't hesitate to email us.
If you have any additional questions, please use our email address and get the questions to us, and look at the resources on martincollinsusa.com.